What's up guys? हम लोग वापस आ गए हैं मेरे होम जिम में. Just kidding guys. This is the Strength Mobcast again back with Kaushal as a guest host. So Kaushal, I was thinking we can start off with the YouTube Q&A thing. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds good. There's one question that was asked, which is basically, um, please discuss about a failed lift, even around your 93 or 95%. If your opener goes to shit, how do you recover from that mentally and physically? So, firstly, I think if your opener is usually the case is that a lot of people open heavy, but let's say that even if you're not opening heavy, if you're doing a lift that is say 92% or 93% of your known one rep max, and say that you've peaked properly, there is a case that you probably haven't done everything that you were supposed to do to peak up to that day. Maybe something was wrong on your peak. Maybe you haven't peaked for that particular comp day. And in India, especially, it's very difficult also to peak for comp day because you don't really know when the comp day is. In a lot of cases, you are told it can be on one day and then they change it. And then sometimes they only inform you 1 week before the comp itself. So you don't really have time to peak. The concept of peaking doesn't really exist in the country itself. But in a case like this, where you know the day and you don't really, like, even if you peak and everything, the first thing you have to do is not panic. Because if you panic, then you'll start thinking about a lot of things that don't even exist. You'll create problems that don't even exist in the first place. There can be multiple issues why you might have failed the lift, and in most cases, it is not a strength issue. In most cases, it's a mental issue where you probably have gone under and you haven't warmed up properly, or you haven't done something properly, or you were too tensed. I have seen that a lot where people get extremely tensed on midday. Like I have one, to give you an example, I have one girl. I think you guys would have known Ananya. She's a lifter that I'm coaching. On her district meet, she was extremely tense to even open up with 90. I think we opened up with 95 or something, which was quite lower than her actual max. So she was extremely scared to even do that. So that's a thing that can play a big role. So the first thing that you have to do is not panic. That's the most important thing in my opinion. And once after you fail the lift, even if you fail the lift, I don't think you should be panicking. You should focus on what went wrong. You should have a reflection on what went wrong. Maybe you weren't tight enough. Maybe your setup wasn't proper enough. Maybe you got tensed that you only have 1 minute to set up and then you rushed it. So these are things that can happen. Try to be as aware as possible of what really happened, and then go back to your second attempt. And I would never really recommend somebody to go up even though they feel like they have the strength. I would say that go for your opener again, unless and until you're extremely experienced and you're very, very confident. Like there are very few cases where somebody will miss their opener and they will jump up.
Yeah.
And usually that happens because of some technical error or something like that, where they've missed a command or something like that, and that's why they failed the lift. And then they might say, okay, the strength is there, it's just that I missed the command, so the second attempt I'll make sure that I get it with a higher weight. So there are cases like that. But in a case when you failed, I think it's very important to stick to the weight that you've already given as your opener. The second attempt that you're going to take is going to be re-attempting your opener that you've just failed. Keep in mind why you failed, what happened. The strength will definitely be there. Even if you're non-peaked, you will have the strength to open at to hit 90% around range of your max on pretty much any day. You will have the strength, even if it's a bad peak. Even if it's a soft peak, bad peak, whatever you could say, you will have the strength to do it. So most of it will come down to mentally. And that's the point that I was saying. Like the first important thing is to never panic. Just focus on what you've made mistakes on, and then go back and correct it on the platform. That's it.
And what do you think the nutrition aspect plays a role? Have we talked about the mental aspect of the game? What do you think the nutrition has to do with failing a lift? Or like some guys will eat a lot of like high carbohydrates or some snacks they won't able to be digesting and they feel bloated at the meet.
Yeah.
So what do you think about those lifters?
I think the most important thing, like as we discussed last time, the important part is to stick to foods that you're already used to and make sure that you don't eat complex carbs before. because it takes a longer time to digest.
Digest it,
And you want, whatever gets into your system quick but doesn't make you drowsy. So you want something that gives you the energy. Like a lot of people will disagree with that, but candy bars are actually very helpful in situations like this. Like gummy bears.
Gummy bear, yeah.
Yeah, these are Skittles, stuff like that is very helpful because it's sugar,
But
and it gets
gummy bear has some gluten in them, I believe, to bind them together.
Yes. Yeah, they use gluten to bind it together.
If people are allergic to gluten, please don't consume gummy bear because we are telling so. Just experiment with your past experiences. For example, try gummy bear in your workout. If it works for you, then well and good. If you have a gluten allergy, don't tag what do you say? Attack us and saying that this guy's told us to eat gummy bear and we have gluten allergies.
Yeah, that's all. That this also comes under basically that always stick to something that you're used to, something that you can have. If you can't have it, then don't do it. So that's basically what it comes down to nutrition when it comes on meat day. Always stick to something that you're used to. Eat as much as you need. Don't overdo it and don't underdo it also. If you underdo it, again, you're going to be too hungry or you're going to be too tired before you're supposed to get tired. Everybody is going to get tired in a meet. That's going to happen.
Because it's a long meet.
Yeah, usually meets are very long and they're definitely, they're intense. They're very, like, it could be a long period of time because based on the number of lifters, but it's intense. Like you have to keep moving around, you have to keep doing stuff, you have to keep moving around so that you still have, you're warmed up. Sometimes it can take longer than you want. Yeah. Sometimes they'll ask you to, perform your lift a lot faster. So there are cases like this. So that's
it's mentally thing. And physically stressful on the body.
Yeah, definitely. Meets are very stressful. Even peaking for a meet is very stressful.
Okay. So, Kaushal, I have a question for you. Well, it's not related to the topic you were just discussing about. So, I have a question. It's like, how do you train your female clients? Is there any difference in programming between males and females for powerlifting?
Yeah. So, I think one of the biggest differences. So, basically, the outlook of male versus female training is going to be similar in the aspect that for any client, the main important thing that you need to look for is, they have their own individualized volume, they have their own weaknesses, they have their own strengths. And this basically applies to everybody, whether they're male or female. So you will still have to take a look at what their, maximum recoverable volume is, which is MRV. You will still have to see what their minimum effective volume is, which is MEV. These are things that you will understand as you progress with the client, where you give them something that you think that works for them, and then you make observations, and then you track down what is really working, what is really not working, under which situations, circumstances did they do well, and under what circumstances they didn't do well. But if you're asking for straightforward differences, usually what happens is that women are smaller in size than men, and they tend to hold lesser amount of muscle.
That's not how you should address that. You are being sexist right
now. Vedant Chandre. Kaushal start.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
So basically, because they're smaller, what ends up happening is they have the ability to recover a lot faster.
Yeah.
And women can generally tolerate a lot higher volumes, and they also seem to do really well with higher rep training. It seems like a lot of women seem to respond a lot better to higher volume training in general, but also higher rep training where the reps are high and it seems to translate automatically into their 1 rep maxes. That is one thing. A lot of women, I feel, have the potential to really focus on high frequency bench work. They can do a lot of high frequency bench work. Again, like leverages again depend because all women are again built differently. Some of them have longer legs, some of them have shorter legs.
They're human after all.
Yeah, they are human after all. It's the same thing. You have the same skeletal structure. It's just that, your reproductive organs are the difference and your hormone levels are going to be different. That's the only thing mainly. But for the most part...
Whoa. Bro, men and women are equal. What are you saying, bro?
For the most part, you're going to have, similar thought processes. The only difference is that, volume is something that you can kind of start off higher for women.
And females, yeah.
And then you can see from there.
And
just like anybody else.
I guess I have read somewhere that women can also higher intensity because they can recover from it faster.
Yeah, that's what. So like their recovery rates are a lot faster, and this concept actually applies to male lifters as well. Like if you compare heavier versus lighter male lifters, lighter male lifters also have the potential to just recover a lot faster than heavier male lifters, which is why you will see 66 kg guys or guys below that, or even 74 kg guys squatting like 3 times or 4 times a week, whereas heavyweight guys can't squat. Maybe they can squat twice or maybe thrice a week. It's very rare that you'll see somebody who's heavyweight who will be squatting for more than 2 times a week. You'll rarely see something like that. Same with bench. They'll probably bench like 2, maybe 3 times a week. They'll deadlift maybe 1 or maybe 1.5 or maybe 2. By 1.5, I mean one more day will be a complete variation, like a block pull or something else, not the direct movement itself.
Yeah. I believe Ray Williams squats like 3 times a week.
He squats only once a week. That's what he says. Because of how every time he squats, he goes 800 pounds or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, got it.
He says that he cannot recover enough to squat once more in a week. So what he does is he does additional leg work like belt squats.
Assistant work.
Yeah, so he does something that mimics the squat pattern. Like belt squat is something that makes you squat without the amount of fatigue that you would get from a squat.
Because it's attached to your hips, basically.
Yeah, because it's attached to your hips. You don't really have to carry something on your back. You don't have to walk out somewhere. You don't have to, you don't have any of that extra elements in there.
Less stress.
There's a lot less stress, and there's good amount of return from that because there's less stress, and you have the ability to practice the movement itself. Plus, it's lower body specific. Your upper body gets a break. There's definitely a way where when you're squatting, there's a lot of chance where you will be feeling the stress probably in your pecs, in your elbows, mainly when you're low bar squatting. So there are different things like that can affect your upper body movements that you have planned for the day. But if you have a squat, a belt squat programmed in somewhere, then it's only going to be lower body specific. It's like leg press. If you do a leg press, then it's not going to affect your upper body movements that you want to do later.
Yeah.
So this is something that's used for more hypertrophy work because it's really good for quad development. But that's basically how he trains, as far as I know. But that's something that I see a lot of powerlifters in because a lot of them focus a lot on hypertrophy work as well.
Yeah, to get bigger muscle.
Yeah.
So Kaushal, what can be an alternative exercise for belt squats since most gyms don't have that equipment?
So Kaushal mentioned over here they can use leg press.
Yeah, so leg press is one thing that I would recommend. Another thing that I would recommend is you could try something like hack squats if you have a hack squat machine. Hack squats are extremely good. They're really good for leg development. Leg extension hamstring curls are they're very basic, but you can use them. They're not bad. You can definitely use them somewhere. I see them fitting in somewhere, but I'd only use them in extremely hypertrophy specific blocks. It's not like it's not like I would use them in other blocks when you're closing in to a full-on strength block or when you're peaking or something like that, because there's more chance to add in variations. Whereas if you take a look at something like a hack squat or a belt squat, they mimic the pattern itself of the squat pattern itself. So that's also some sort of practice for you to practice the squat itself, even though it's not the exact same thing. It's going to be lower on your list of specificity.
Okay, nice.
Yes.
And obviously there are a lot of single leg movements like
Bulgarian split squats.
Bulgarian split squats are amazing for depending on how you do them. A wider stance is glute specific, closer stance, more knee travel is squat specific. So you have different exercises like that. So again, I think exercise selection is something that majorly depends on your leverages. It makes a big difference on leverages as well. Like depending on your leverages, you have to choose exercises that suit your body.
Nice.
So Kaushal, recently you had put up a story talking about leverages and how it affects frequency, how it affects frequency and recovery. So can you furthermore elaborate on that?
Okay, so when we talk about frequency in powerlifting, it plays a big role. When we talk about frequency or exercise selection in bodybuilding, it's a little different. We are going to try and stick to powerlifting side, and also we're going to dabble a little bit into bodybuilding because hypertrophy is important, as we've talked. Yeah. So when we talk about leverages, what we basically mean is limb lengths of each person. Each person is different. Even though their overall skeletal structure is the same, everybody has different leverages. That is different arm lengths, different leg lengths, different torso length, different femur length. So these are things that will play a role, and I'll explain you how. Basically, if you take somebody like, say, like for me, for example, if I take myself as an example, and I have somebody else who is the same exact height as me, like both of us are 6'2", both of us are the same weight.
Deva.
Yeah, let's take him as an example. Let's say me and him same height, same weight, but for a guy like me, I have very long legs and I have a small torso, which basically means small upper body, and I have long arms. So what ends up happening is that because of the way my body is built, when I squat, I'm going to take much more lower back stress because of how I'm going to have a more of a lean in my upper body when I squat. And that is something that you can't really change because I am built to squat that way. The only thing I can play around with is probably stance or maybe increase my ankle mobility and then, kind of stay a little more upright, but that's not going to help so much because this is how my body is and I have to make sure that I squat this way. Now, let's say that the person I'm comparing with, let's say Deva, he has a very proportionate torso to, leg, this thing and leg ratio. And let's say that his legs are not that long, not as long as mine. His squat is going to be much more upright, which means that his squats are going to be a lot more, leg dominant, whereas mine is going to be more hip dominant. And at the same time, what's going to happen is that for somebody like me, because I have more of a lean, I'm going to take much more pressure and much more stress on my lower back. Whereas he isn't going to take the same amount of stress or pressure.
Right.
So how exactly this affects you? So how exactly does this affect you is that there is a chance where, for example, because of the fact that my lower back is fatigued from squats, I might have to cut down on volume from deadlifts.
Yeah.
Because I cannot do the same amount. Whereas somebody like him, he can continue because he hasn't had that same amount of stress on his lower back. He can continue to deadlift and it won't be a problem.
Right.
So it depends that way where you will have to see, based on limb lengths, you'll have to see what kind of recovery they have and how much it affects them, how much they're taking stress and how much you can, you will have to basically observe a lot when it comes to something like this, because there are different people who can adapt. Like even if with my build, there are some people who've pushed themselves over and over again to get to a position where they can do high volume on both. It is possible, but the leverages definitely do play a role, like I said, like I gave an example right now. So somebody like me can probably not squat and deadlift at a higher frequency because of the fact that I'm going to have a lot of lower back involvement when I squat. Whereas somebody like him, who is built more evenly, he can push more in terms of squats and he can push more in terms of deadlifts simply because of the fact that he's not taking as much stress as I am.
Right.
I've got one more question for you, Kaushal. As you talk about low bar squat, so can high bar squats reduce the stress of lower back?
Yeah, definitely. So I think again, here also, even though leverages do play a role, again, how your high bar squat is going to look, but mostly your high bar squat is going to be quad dominant, which which allows a lot more forward knee travel because of how the bar is placed higher on your back, and higher on your traps, and you will have to stay upright because low bar is much more forgiving that way, where you can have forward lean and you can still muscle it up. Whereas in a high bar squat, if the bar starts rolling onto your neck, you will fall forward. That way high bar squat is not as forgiving. So your goal when you're going to be squatting high bar is to stay upright, not as upright as you might think. Like it has to be as upright as you can stay.
Yeah, not as like what do you say, like textbook recommendation.
Yeah, not like a textbook recommendation that your body has to be 90 degrees or something like that. You will still have some forward lean based on your leverages, but just make sure that the bar isn't rolling. I mean, that's the thing that you want in both high bar and low bar. But you in a high bar situation, it's much more dangerous when the bar starts falling forward.
Yeah, I have a good book I used to read, the Squat Bible.
Yeah, that's a really good book from
Yes,
Spot University. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very nice book, Dr. N. Horsey.
Yeah, that's a very good book on squat mechanics.
So I have learned about so many squats flaw I have in the future, past. Sorry. So I try to fix it with this book altogether. So it has helped me a lot. So if you are interested in reading this, please give it a try. It will help you in the long run to know about like what is your body capable of, like how much you can lift by improving just the technique.
Makes a big difference.
People have like this what do you say, thinking like if they just practice it for a long time they can improve it. That's true, but if you have the knowledge you can save some time for like finding out yourself and learning it faster.
There's a saying that practice doesn't make you perfect, perfect practice makes you perfect.
Yeah, nice.
So
I love it.
I think that applies here, because it's not just about practicing what you like to do, it's also about practicing it in the right way. You can do this for 5 years and do it in the wrong way, and then you will end up injuring yourself, or you can do it for 5 years in the right way and make much more progress than you have.
Yeah,
right. So Kaushal, I have another question for programming. Vedant, तुझे पूछना है पहले.
हाँ, मेरा क्वेश्चन लेवरेज से रिलेटेड है इसलिए.
Okay, go ahead.
ठीक है. Yeah, so Kaushal, since you said that you have long limbs and we both do, so a long limb squat is more taxing on the lower back.
Yeah.
And because of that you have to lower your frequency or your sets on the conventional deadlift, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so in the same scenario, if someone is doing sumo deadlift, will there be any changes in his frequency?
I think sumo in general has much more tolerance. Like, you have a lot more tolerance to volume. You can definitely get away with doing more volume because you are not going to be taxing your lower back musculature as much as you will on conventional. So when even if you're somebody with a higher, like as you said, longer legs, your hip position is going to be higher than other sumo pullers.
Yeah.
Which is obviously going to make you not stay as upright as other sumo pullers. But it's not going to affect your lower back as much as it would have on conventional. So you can definitely get away with more volume on something like that. So what I like to do is I like to treat the sumo as a completely different individual lift when it comes to something like that, where I'll take a look at how I'll give them more volume than I would give for a conventional lifter, and then, as I said, it always comes down to observation. So I'll give them more volume than I would have to a conventional lifter, and then I'll observe from there.
Okay.
Because the sumo uses more of quads, glutes than the conventional setup.
Yeah, lower back and hamstrings.
Yeah, and it also, then the lower back hamstrings. Like conventional is, posterior chain dominant.
Dominant, yes.
Whereas sumo is more, it lets you use more anterior chain into the lift.
Like quads.
Yeah, that's what, like quads. So that's.
Yes, but there are different stances in sumo. Like I do hybrid sumo. Some do like wide stance sumo. So does that affect that thing?
Stance wise, I don't think it makes such a big difference, because stance itself is individual to the person's, I think, external rotational capability of the hips.
Basically, mobility of your hips.
Yeah, mobility of your hips. So how much you can actually externally rotate at the joint capsule of the femur itself is what matters. Okay. How wide you can go. Like for somebody like me, even though I have long legs and my reach is long, I cannot open up that much. Even my
I used to do wide stance in like past 2 years, but right now I'm just stick to hybrid stance, like to avoid previous injuries, like to avoid triggering the previous injury. I don't know why, but I feel more comfortable in close stance sumo rather than wide stance sumo. That's just my personal preference, which I've developed in recent years.
So that's something that I've also seen in, like, taller lifters generally prefer to stay closer. They don't like sumo. They just don't feel comfortable in sumo. That's what I've seen. Yes. And it's very rare actually to see somebody who has super long legs to do sumo. I have not seen a lot of lifters who have longer legs who are comfortable doing sumo. There are very few actually that I can say. I think Vedant is one guy who's very comfortable doing sumo, but there are not a lot of lifters that I've seen even on an international platform who are very comfortable doing sumo because they have long legs. A lot of them still stick to conventional
deadlift, yeah.
And even at the lower weight classes or shorter guys, like if you take a look at 74 category, you take a look at Taylor Atwood, and his sumo stance is again very similar to a hybrid stance. It's not very wide. Whereas the other ones like there's a 74 kg guy called Ricky, I think
Ricky Cho.
Yeah, Ricky Cho. So Ricky has a wider proper sumo stance that you would usually see.
Yes.
So that's again very individual. It comes down to the person itself. Where they feel comfortable, where they're able to generate the most amount of force for themselves is very different.
Okay. And basically to be comfortable in the position.
Yeah.
And based on leverages, I think there are different trade-offs as well. Like for a long-limbed person, a deadlift will be an easier lift because they have long limbs and long arms, so it will be easier for them to lock out. And as opposed to a person with short limbs, it will be easier for them to squat.
Yeah, usually squat or bench. That's what usually you see.
Bench,
if you take a look at 93 kg class, you'll see there's a guy called Jonathan Keiko.
Yeah.
So he's built like a fridge. He's literally built like a fridge. He's very wide, and at the same time he's short, but he has very even torso to leg and hand limbs, which is why his bench is super strong.
Yeah.
Like I think his bench max is 240 kgs.
240.
Wow.
Yeah, which is insane. Which is insane in a tested federation, which is crazy.
For 93 kg also.
For a 93 kg guy, because those are numbers that you will see at 120 plus category. Like there are not many 120 kg lifters also who have done 240 or something.
Yeah.
What's the max of Ray Williams?
250, 255, something like that.
So that's like 10 kg more. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. He has only like 15 kgs more than Jonathan has, and he's obviously like 100 kgs heavier.
More than that, actually.
Yeah. Ray Williams competes around 190 something. So when you look at somebody like that, his leverages are so good for bench. Whereas his squat is also pretty good, his deadlift is also pretty good, but like all of that is because he's so well rounded as a lifter, like his limbs. So
and if you compare the last year's winner, which was David Wilson, he is a completely opposite person. He has long limbs, long stance squat, a wider range, a longer range of motion on the bench.
He has
you see a large array of people in this sport of different leverages competing at the same weight class.
Definitely. Like if you take a look at 105 itself, 105.
Bryce Lewis.
Yeah, 105 has basically short people and tall people, everybody thrown inside. Like if you take a look at Bryce Lewis is a short guy. He's not very tall, and he's built properly. Garrett Blessings is like
Garrett Blessings, yeah.
He's like that. There is Christoph. I don't think he's in the IPF anymore.
Where's Vicky?
Yeah, Christoph used to be there, and
there's Bryce Klochik.
Yeah, he was built for deadlift. Bryce Klochik is also built for deadlift. So these are guys who are on the shorter side of 105. But then there are other taller guys like Emil Norling, who is there right now, who's Sweden's best 105 lifter.
Yeah.
He's tall. He's like 6 something. And then there is a guy called Cameron Saint Amand from Canada. He's like 6 foot something. The guy that I was working with previously, Rondell Hunt. He was 105 junior world champ in 2018.
He's super strong.
He's the strongest.
He's the strongest at 105. But if you take a look at him, he's a pretty tall guy. Like he's 5'11". That's not like a bad height. Yeah, that's so. It's not like a bad height. He's a 105 at 5'11", whereas other 105s are like 5'7", 5'8". So that's the thing. Like you will see different people in the same weight class, but then the best weight class for you is where you're able to hold the most amount of muscle and also be strong.
Yes.
That's the best weight class that you have to, and that's something that you'll figure out over time. Like you'll have to keep playing around. You have to keep see. I think you'll realize that after a couple of years of training, of proper training, of trying to build on as much muscle as you possibly can, and then see.
And since we are talking about weight classes and how different people are in the same weight class, we see a predominantly thing that lankier lifters who have like long limbs, long arms, they are predominantly very lankier. For example, they start from a lower weight class and gradually increase in the higher weight class. And you also were a 74, 83 kind of guy when you started out. Am I right?
I was 60, bro.
So can you give our viewers some tips how to jump weight class, how to grow some muscle mass, and find a suitable weight class for them, for their height?
So usually what you see is like if they're taller, then it's much better that you focus on growing as much as you can and fit in higher weight classes. Don't try to limit yourself to a much lower weight class. I see people who are like 5'10", maybe 6 foot, who will end up staying at 70 or 66 or 74 or 83. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me because they have the potential to build much more according to their own frame. And I know genetics plays a role. I know that a lot of people have different limitations, different level of muscle mass that they can build. But the goal should be to build as much as you can, and then you'll figure out. Over time, you'll figure out. So if you're a taller guy, it's much safer for you to be in a taller weight class. Don't limit yourself in a higher weight class. Don't limit yourself, and think of trying to beat somebody at a lower weight class and try to limit your own potential. Because I don't see the point of you limiting yourself or something like that. It's much better that you focus on reaching your actual potential. Also, I think a lot of people should focus on bulking properly. A lot of people don't do that because the thing with bulking is that you will put on fat. That's inevitable. That's going to happen. Regardless of what you do, when you bulk, you're at a caloric surplus. You are going to have fat that you're going to put on. And like nobody's saying do a completely crazy dirty bulk where you're like at a 2000 surplus and then you become so fat that you can't move. No one is saying any of that. Building quality muscle mass takes time. I think that's one thing. You have to be very patient when you're building muscle, especially when you're natural. And it's very important to understand that you have to bulk to put on muscle. Body recomp is something that only happens if you're a beginner or if you're on steroids or if you're coming back after a break. These are things like right now, like we all haven't trained properly in the last 2 months at all. And I don't think any of us is doing home workouts properly either.
Yes, you can tell I have a home gym right here. Leco plates all around.
So because like it's very difficult, you just don't feel like training at home or whatever. It could be any reason, but when we go back to the gym, obviously you are going to see significant changes in your body very quickly for the first 2 to 3 months maybe.
There's a sudden strength ramp up.
There'll be a sudden strength ramp again. There'll be a sudden, it'll be like noob gains again all over again, where your body again is going to, you're going to get leaner at the same time as you're going to build up muscle. So that's basically body recomp, but that is not something that you can do for the rest of your life. So it's very important that people actually bulk. They should eat. A lot of people don't eat. There will be phases where you'll have to stuff yourself if you actually want to grow. That is something that I had to do when I was, I was like, I think before I started lifting, I was like 60 something, 65, 68 kgs. And I was extremely skinny. So I had to eat a lot. I had to force feed myself in order to get to this, body weight. I think around 100, 105 is somewhere where I'll be somewhat lean at around like 18% or 16% body fat. That's where, ideally for me, but the goal is to build more because I know I have the capacity to build more.
What's your body fat right now?
Right now, I'd say around 20 something because I haven't been training at all.
Okay. So when I was 105, I was 17% body fat.
Yeah,
like,
mine
those are estimates, but.
Yeah, you can never give like a 100% accurate body fat percentage unless you get like a DEXA scan maybe. But even that, we don't know.
DEXA is not accurate, but
even that is not accurate.
Stick to numbers.
Yeah, we can just stick to numbers. So like for me.
Also, okay. Say.
I think for me around 106, 107, my abs started to show a little bit.
Nice.
So that's
when I was
modified.
reading the strength, muscle and strength book, that Eric Helms ka book, so he mentioned if you're thinking about bulking, you should start with a 15% body fat so that you can put on fat percentage. Or if you just start off with 20% body fat and you start your bulking very rigorously, you can put a lot of fat which will be more difficult to cut out later.
Yes,
so
yes,
what's your take on this?
Yeah, so the ideal way of bulking and cutting is that you do a bulk where you probably stop the bulk when you're like at 22%. Don't cross more than that. And then from there, you want to cut down to say 15%, 14%, at least. This is usually what I like. This is usually what I would say, because if you cut below 14% or something, then you start seeing a lot of strength loss. Yeah. Because you're going into like really lean territory.
Single digit numbers are always for like physique lifters only.
Yeah, they're always like either physique lifters or like people who are into bodybuilding style, if they're getting into their competition prep, something like that. That's the only time you'll see somebody going into single digit. But single digit is not ideal for powerlifters. Usually you'll only see people go into single digit when they do an extreme water cut, or they're trying to really stick into some weight class.
And that's not healthy also.
Yeah, that's not healthy also long term, because if you're too lean also, it can definitely affect your joint health.
This is testosterone also.
Yeah, it affects your testosterone also. Like that's the thing. If you're too high on body fat, like say if you're 22% above, 25% above, then your test actually goes down. And if you're
general recommendation for males are like 15% body fat, na?
Yeah,
normal people also.
Around 14 to 16% is like the best.
Okay. And female, it's a bit higher.
Female is a bit higher because of how their body distributes fat.
Right.
For them, it's kind of required.
Yes.
So they'll have to. For them, body fat is like, I think around 20% body fat 22. For them is like, 22% body fat is like proper for them.
Yes. Yeah. So I have one other question for you, Kaushal. Just a minute. It's regarding programming only. So I've seen you program SBD for your clients. So why do you program SBD days for some of your clients? What are their benefits?
So the thing about SBD is that it's very specific to a comp scenario. Okay. And what ends up happening is that you get an idea of what they're truly capable of on a comp day.
Okay.
When you make them do SBD, obviously not all SBD sessions are going to be where you're going to have a higher RPE on all the 3 lifts. It could be like a squat specific day where I'm going to have somebody lift heavy on squat and then lighter on bench and deadlift. Whereas I might have a separate day for bench again, and then I might have a separate day for deadlift. But SBD days are something that add a lot of specificity to your, like to you related to the sport itself.
Okay.
So what we tend to do is that we give out SBD days only for guys that I feel are absolutely needed for, like somebody who is much more advanced lifter. I would say somebody who has the foundation as a lifter, like at least a couple of years under the belt of lifting. At least they have a few years of good practice, good technique. That's the only time that I would think of adding SBD training days, because they're very fatiguing, first of all.
Right. And so how many days do you prefer, like SBD days, if you're programming? 2 days or 3 days?
1, maybe 2. That's it.
Okay.
3 days too much.
2, 3 I see is very too much. I see very few
doable.
Yeah, it is doable. It's doable if if you like really manage what to do on which day.
Yeah.
Only then it's really doable, because otherwise you are going to build on a lot of fatigue.
Right.
And it's not something that you can do as a long-term block. I don't see people able to sustain something like that for multiple days, for multiple weeks on end.
Absolutely.
I think.
go ahead.
I think SBD days are something that definitely help when you're peaking for a particular day. Mm-hmm. So provided you know the day beforehand of the comp itself, what you can do is you can say that you're going to be lifting on a Saturday, on a particular Saturday of the comp is on Saturday of say 7 weeks from now. you can have the rest of your week in such a way where it's like, moderate volume, moderate intensity, something like that, where you're leading up to Saturday's SBD day.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then on Saturday you can have a proper SBD session which is very specific to your comp itself, where you're doing lower rep range but higher intensity, or some lifters, very few lifters actually peak very well when you have higher volume. So that again is very dependent. But in most cases, it's like in most cases peaking is basically you trying to be as specific as possible to the comp day itself, and then you taper into a meet. So what I see is SBD days usually work really well for a comp setup.
On a theory basis.
Yeah, like you just have it on that particular day. Say you're lifting on Saturday, you have your SBD day on Saturday, 7 weeks out. That's when you start your peak or something like that. And then every Saturday, you see how you feel, how you're moving, how you're feeling, how you're actually able to hit numbers on the day. This will help you determine. And it actually, like, the body also gets used to that particular rhythm, that Saturday is the day that I'm going to be doing this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
So that is one thing, like your body's circadian rhythm, as they say, your body's biological clock, your body's biological, adapting to something. It also responds in such a way where you feel like, okay, Saturday is the day where I have to go and kill it.
And at
Right.
the same time also, you'll try to have a timing fixing also, no?
Yeah,
Like-
if you already know the timing of the lifts, like, I mean, in India, it's not very, you
For the
can't.
national, you can go with it, but for not the states and
Yeah,
district.
states and
Yeah.
districts, you can't. National level also, it's kind of confusing at times. Sometimes they follow, sometimes they
Sometimes.
don't follow.
Yeah.
But any kind of Asian meet or any kind of international meet, anything at an international level is always going to be organized very well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very nice meets. But yeah, there's no delay actually in the competitions also. It's like it's 2 o'clock, you're competing, go.
Yeah. It's they do everything on time. They do everything as quickly as they possibly can. They give very limited time for any kind of mistake to happen. So they do it as perfectly as they can. So that's the reason why you can time these things actually.
In the international meets, of course.
In international meet. That's why you see a lot of if you see anybody who's preparing for a particular competition, like a very important competition like IPF Worlds. If you take a look at any of the people who are competing, usually what they do is they tend to practice at a particular time of the day also.
Mhm.
If they have the luxury of training as whenever they want to.
Mhm.
Because obviously everybody has a life outside lifting, everybody has their own job, everybody has to make money so that they can support this
Passion.
passion that they have, because not everybody makes money from powerlifting. I don't think anybody makes money from powerlifting itself.
Yeah, it's like a coaching thing, or you're
Yeah.
selling some ebooks or stuff.
Yeah, that's the only
Yeah.
way you can actually make money from powerlifting. Like, you're never going to directly make money.
Yeah, some player at the top level makes some kind of money, but that's not enough.
Yeah, that's not enough also. That's why they also have other jobs. That's why they try and get as many sponsorships as they can. So it's something very different that way. But yeah, these are things that you try to be as specific as possible for the day itself of the meet.
I
Nice.
think powerlifting will see a change like bodybuilding did. Like if you have seen what's that movie of Arnold and other guys,
Generation Iron.
Generation 9 or something.
Uh,
No.
pumping
Oh.
iron.
Pumping iron.
Pumping iron, yeah.
Nice.
So
First
pumping
movie.
iron. In pumping iron, you can see that these guys are doing some construction work or they have a job outside
Yeah.
bodybuilding. So I think in years to follow, powerlifting will become a sport like bodybuilding right now. Well, you'll get
Yeah.
sponsorships and all the brands, and you don't have to work any other job. It might be.
Yeah, it may be possible because powerlifting as a sport is picking up a lot of popularity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
A lot of people are finding out about powerlifting. A lot of people are trying to get into powerlifting. Even in India, I have seen a lot of people who say that I don't want to be skinny anymore. I want to be strong. I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Body
Yeah.
fat.
This is a thing that I have seen a lot of change in. A lot of people have. This is a trend that I've basically seen where a lot of people say that, bro, I just want to get strong. That's it. I'll do whatever you want me to say, want me to do. I just want to get strong. This is something that I get from people.
I've seen a lot of teenagers like getting involved in doing heavy deadlifts and
Yeah.
squats just because of even if they don't know much about powerlifting, but yeah, but that trend is going on. They have to be stronger or they have to lift more.
Yeah, that is definitely
So
there.
I guess that's the part of being a masculine thing going on the what do you say industry right now. If you can't
Yeah.
let deadlift 405, you are just kid. I guess that's the
Yeah, that's also there. No, like even when you tell people that you're lifting, usually people assume either that you're muscular or you're really strong.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're not strong, then you get mocked for not being strong.
But I feel that trend. But I feel that trend came from David Laid only, because David Laid was the guy who was like very famous, who was doing deadlifts at he's a competitive powerlifter, but he does like what 300 kg deadlift at around 80-90 kg body weight,
Yeah,
90 kg body
which is
weight,
very good. Yeah,
which is
which is
very
pretty good.
impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I guess this trend is because of Ronnie Coleman and other people at the golden era like Arnold and stuff who started the trend of
see, bro,
bodybuilding.
not many people know that Arnold used to powerlift.
Yeah.
Every person in that era used to compete in powerlifting and bodybuilding at the same time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like even
you can say
Franco Colombo,
Franco
Franco
Colombo.
Colombo was a yes, he was strongest
he
bodybuilder
was
at that time.
yeah, at that point of time. So
Yes.
but the thing is that all of them are known for bodybuilding. They're not really known for
Yeah.
powerlifting.
Yeah.
Because
So
powerlifting is not
I
a
feel
glamorous sport.
yeah,
yes. I feel David Laid and Larry Wills are the main gems who are like promoting powerlifting. Also, Juji Mufu is there in the
yeah,
list,
even
but
he's
Juji
there.
Mufu
Yeah,
is more into arm wrestling, and he's kind of he just wants popularity, and he also wants to promote the sport.
yeah. So
So
like
I like that guy. He's good.
he's one guy. I think Russell Orhe does a lot.
Russell,
Yeah.
yeah. He was a
Russell Orhe does a lot.
bodybuilder.
He was a bodybuilder who then changed into powerlifting because he just wanted to be strong. He saw the
Like,
potential there.
I got this Christian Guzman introduced the
Yeah.
guy Russell Orhe to the powerlifting
Yeah,
game.
he
I
got
used to
him there.
follow Christian Guzman. He was like
Yeah.
good thing, summer prep
Summer
something.
shred,
Summer
shred.
shred, yeah.
So much red.
He
Yeah.
used
He
to
used
do
to have
this
that.
big three
He's the
compound
owner of
movements.
Alpha Athlete clothing line.
And there's one more guy. What's his name? He's like the shreddest guy, has the good packs. He's what is his name? Matt August. Sorry,
Matt August is one more guy. Yeah, even
Yeah.
he's pretty strong actually.
Matt August promoted pull, push, and legs. at the
Yeah,
time.
he was the one that promoted PPL. I think he also talked a little bit about DUP back then.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of people who did their part in trying to popularize the sport indirectly, even though they weren't competitors themselves.
But they were like, I want to be strong and compete at this body weight and to be lean
And
altogether.
to be lean altogether. So that's why they didn't really excel in powerlifting. But if they chose to actually increase more and do better, then there's definitely chance
Yeah,
for them to
they
do
can-
well here
they can
as well.
get stronger, obviously.
Yeah, if they increase specificity, basically.
Yeah, so Kaushal, I want to dial it back to the programming thing we were talking about. So since you said that you would include the SBD days once or twice in your program for the athlete, so both of those SBD days will be com specific, or will it be close assistant movements?
It depends on the lifter again. It depends on how their recovery is. It depends on how much frequency they're able to handle. And it also depends on how how well they're able to take a full SBD day. So if you program like really heavy, one SBD really heavy, you're definitely going to have the other day as moderate or light.
Accessory.
You it's either going to be an accessory or it's going to be a practice session sort of, which is still going to get you enough stimulus with the main movement itself, but it's not going to be damaging. Say like one day can be something like you have like a 90% squat and then 85% bench and then maybe an 87.5% deadlift, something like that, where the reps are really low. Like you say, two singles, one single and then one single, something like that, and then a few back offs. That's one SBD day that you can have. And then the second SBD day, you can either have a high bar squat and then you can have a bench, or if your bench is the priority for that SBD day, then you can have a bench first and then a squat next. Something like that. So that will completely depend on the person and how they are adapting to different things. That again comes down very individual.
Okay, so you guys have any questions?
That's it, I guess. It should be a good point to start off the rapid fire questions. What do you think,
Yes.
Kaushal?
Yeah, we can
I
start
think
off.
I have one last question.
Huh.
Okay, go ahead.
Since we can say that there are two types of people,
Hmm.
two types of lifters. One are neurotic and one are very chaotic, which means that some people need external, stimulus to ramp
Hype.
them up,
Yeah.
like music or
Caffeine.
ammonium salts. Yeah, caffeine. Exactly. And some people like Aidcon or us, we just build some fire inside and just go lift. And
Yeah.
what can you say about that? What are your take on those lifters?
I think see something like that is again like it's very individual to the person because some people have a ritual that they perform before the lift.
Yes.
Like some people just like to sit there and they look very calm, but inside they're really fired up.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
I believe everyone is fired up from the inside, but some people show that because they
Yeah.
have the characteristic of the person.
Yeah. Some people are like that. They're just like that. They like to show that part, and some people don't like to show that.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of people, there are a lot of lifters, who'll slap themselves or they'll ask somebody to slap them, and then they'll just rush into the platform.
I am one of them.
Yeah. So there are people like that who are like super, intense.
Yeah.
And then there are other people who just don't like to. Like I like doing that. I just like to sit there and just close my eyes or just talk about random things that is not involved in the lift itself.
Yeah.
So
Because
the same
so I
personality
feel
again.
this depends also upon which gym you're training in. So I was training in a hardcore powerlifting specific gym.
Yeah.
So we were all teenagers. Like we used to just go and tap each other. So it just came out of that thing, I feel. But
Tap each other.
as if right now I'm just training alone. So I don't need any kind of hype during my workout. So
Yeah,
I
I think
guess we can change that thing.
that's also a very important point that you said. Actually, environment also matters a lot.
Yeah.
That also definitely matters a lot. Like if you're in an environment where everybody shouting and yelling, even you'll
Yeah.
start doing that.
Yes.
It's just something that will come to you automatically. But if you're alone, then you don't. A lot of people don't really do that. Very few people will hype themselves even when they're alone.
Or the camera.
Just because video proposes. Yes.
Yeah. So like in most cases, when I'm training alone, when I train, usually I train alone. And when something like that
Yeah.
happens, at the max, the only thing I'll do is listen to music. And sometimes I don't even do that. I'll just sit there and in my mind, I'll just keep visualizing a lift.
Even I like to train alone just because during squat I don't like to just decrease the squat rack height and other stuff. It's very irritating to just bring down that squat
train
height, then
alone in a
puff it
gym,
up.
like empty gym, or like
Working out
training with
alone.
the person.
Nah, it means alone. Like
Oh,
no one is there to in between or something like that.
okay.
Yeah.
Because I like people around when they're talking about doing their own stuff, not interfering with me specifically.
Yeah.
But they're in the gym.
That's important.
Like that's the thing. Like even I do. Like if there are friends in the gym, then between sets, I like to talk.
Yeah, me too. Like it's like a good conversation to have. Like, how's the speed on the squat? Was it
Yeah.
good? Should I increase the weight?
You can talk about a lot of things. You can talk about non-lifting also to kind of take your mind away in
Mind
between.
off,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
and turn your mind off, and then some people can do that where they can focus for a short amount of time, but they can focus a lot.
Yeah.
So that's something that I like to do where I like to focus exactly just before the lift.
Actually, I believe like people surrounding you could affect you in getting more numbers if you
Yeah.
have the personality. Like
Yeah.
I had this friend who was like, you can do 300k deadlift for Pakka. His name is Ananjay Purohit. He's like a doctor.
Okay.
So he is like, bro, you can do 300 kg Pakka deadlift. So I was like, can I? So like he's like, okay. So I'll peak for deadlift competition. So I'll peak for a deadlift day specifically. So I peaked for it for like 8 weeks. I peaked for the deadlift day, 24th of 2018, I believe. So I deadlifted
December.
300
Christmas.
kg.
Yeah. That we all saw.
So I was like, fuck, if you are surrounded with positive people, you can do anything.
Yeah, that's
So
definitely there.
just imagine, guys. So if you guys we met and we just planned a workout together, it will be such a hyping workout.
Yeah, definitely.
We all
Actually,
can hit maxes.
It makes
Yeah,
a
I
huge
will train
difference.
carbs.
Yeah. I
It
believe
definitely
there's
makes a
some
huge
sort of
difference.
connection like we are having people right now. If they are in the same sport, if we like to talk about the same thing,
Yeah,
there's something inside to like I should impress him because we are in the same kind of sport and
Yeah.
yeah,
try
that
to
will be
impress
there.
them.
That
There's
will be
some
there.
sort of like connection between mental aspects, I believe.
Yeah, that is definitely
Yeah.
there.
Because as an alpha male, we try to impress other lifters also to tell them I'm alpha, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
piss
सही
and
बात.
mark your territory. I think you just missed that point, Aniket. That's
I
the
have a
most
dog. I have
that's the most important point of being in the jungle.
I have a dog, bro. It pisses everywhere.
Okay, so Kaushal, since we have talked a lot about these things,
Hmm.
since training and everything and nutrition as well,
Yeah.
there's one important point that we missed, and it is injuries.
Mhm.
So I think all of us have had a fair share of injuries,
Yeah.
and there's one question that we have been asked. It is how to assess nature or magnitude of injuries and decide the course of events.
So I think the first thing that you have to do, like again, when we like going back to the mental aspect of failing a lift, a lot of people what they do is when they get injured they panic a lot, and immediately like there's obviously sometimes like there was this happened to me once where I had I had a normal deadlift day, and 3 days later I had a deadlift PR planned.
Hmm.
And what happened to me was I had a out of nowhere while I was warming up for the deadlift itself, like the medium deadlift day, I had a back pain. Like I had a really bad lower back strain, and it was so bad that I couldn't move for the next 2 days. So the first thing in cases like that, what ends up happening is that you start panicking and then you start assuming the worst, because that's what we usually do. We start thinking that okay, this is over, there's no more day, that's it, this is done. But the first thing that you have to do is move around, try to move around, try to walk around, try to do as many air squats, air deadlifts, hip hinge, see what you're able to do, what you're not able to do, and then you have to plan accordingly based on that. And sometimes even if you have pain, it just goes away within the next 2 days. There's no reason why it even happens.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere you just get it. So for me that happened, and then 2 days later I went and I hit a PR.
Alan Thrala has made a video on it, on this
Yeah.
special topic.
Yes, I think specifically ever since he joined Barbell Medicine, because Barbell Medicine has a lot of stuff on pain and pain
exercises,
management.
yeah. I
Pain,
listen to them on the podcast.
yeah, they have a lot of stuff on pain in general. They have the mental aspect of pain, they have the physical aspect of pain, they have pain management, they have injury management, they have a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But when it comes to any kind of injury that you get, usually you have to make an assessment of what you're able to do, what you're not able to do, and then see what is working, what is not working, and then plan accordingly. You have to figure out why it happened, you have to figure out what happened, you have to figure out what you can work on and what you can't work on, and then you do what you can do, and then you work on what stuff needs to be worked on. Like another thing that I have recently come to understand is that a lot of people do mobility warm-ups in the name of mobility warm-ups, where they just do everything that exists. They
Yeah.
do a
Specific for lifting.
they do
Yeah.
a full body mobility warm-up. They'll do a lot of other mobility work. They'll
Dynamic stuff and whatnot.
yeah, they'll do a lot of other stuff that might not that might not be required for the day that they're doing.
Yeah.
Like on the day, what movements you have planned is what you should be warming up for.
Yeah.
And the exercises, also warm-up exercises that I have noticed, they play a big role in what kind of a person you are. If you're somebody that is chronic, like you've been chronically put in an extension pattern, like if your entire spine is in an extension pattern, then you likely have APT, and then your warm-up should be something that kind of reduces that APT so that it does not, increase a chance of injury when you're squatting or deadlifting. So these are things that I've come to notice of late. This is something that is very new to me actually. So I'm still learning something about this. But warming up specifically for what you're doing is also very important.
I have few recommendations for warming up. Like I have certain books from JTS. So if you just Google squat manual or bench press manual or deadlift manual, you'll get the 50-page PDF. You can download it. So they have just mentioned every sort of warm up which is necessary for that specific lift. So you all can just read it and apply it.
That's something that will work for general population definitely.
Yeah.
But in case of individual, injuries, like if somebody has an individual specific injury,
Yeah.
then it's much better to actually go to somebody who deals with injuries.
Also, what do you think about treating your injuries from watching online videos or online physiotherapist videos?
It's,
So
it's definitely
I've seen lot of guys do like I'm self what we say self I'm doing self therapy
yeah.
and that stuff.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
It's
Speaking from
very
experiences.
yeah. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Like for me, I had a case I think in 2016 or something like that. I had some lower back pain, and then I just didn't. I went to some physio, but then they told me to do something else, and then that did work out. But then I did my own research, and then I did some rehab exercises, and then luckily I was spot on with my diagnosis, so I was able to recover quickly. Whereas
Yeah.
the other thing that I had recently were in 2018 end or 2019 starting, I had a lower back pain, and that thing didn't go away until recently actually, until Jan.
Mhm.
That pain was still there. Like I wasn't able to deadlift properly. I wasn't able to do anything properly. That showed up on my previous mock meet that I had done. So it's something that definitely affected me quite a lot. And it's what I understood was like how much ever I tried, whatever sort of exercises that I had done, it did not help me at all. Until I reached out to somebody who's an expert who deals with a lot of injury management, who deals with a lot of injury corrective exercises.
Yeah.
And what I couldn't fix in 8 months, he fixed it in 2 days.
Fuck.
So that's what like we might think that we're saving money, but in the long term actually we are not.
Save time.
I wasted 8 months that way because I thought, okay, I'm smart enough to figure this out. I'll figure it out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's not something that I have to worry about. Maybe it's not something that I have to think about. Something like that. And then eventually, I got so irritated with this because I was just not able to deadlift that I was like, okay. And it obviously affects your squat also because it's a full body movement there also.
Yeah.
Some pain somewhere you just can't push yourself enough.
Mhm.
So I got very irritated, and then that's when I approached somebody who is an injury specialist, and he was the guy who told me that okay, this is what we need to do. And then the moment I did those corrective exercises, I lost pain completely. There was no pain at all.
Huh.
So I think it's very important to go to somebody who knows what they're doing when it comes to something like this.
Or if you have back pain, listen to Stuart McGill.
Yeah, he has a lot of books. He has a lot of stuff that's very good for back pain.
But I feel he has very complex writing, so most of guys will not understand what he has written.
Yeah, most of us will not understand. If your anatomy is not good, then you won't understand what he's saying.
Because I tried reading some of his book. I had some PDF. It just went above my head.
Yeah, you'll have to like really Google each thing, or you'll have to understand, read anatomy books beforehand before you even get into something like that.
Yeah.
It's very necessary. But
Okay.
once you had a hang of it, it's very easy.
Yeah, once you get a hang of it, actually, it's pretty easy.
So Aniket, we should start with the rapid questions, I guess.
Perfect. So
Okay.
who's going to start off?
I'll just explain Kaushal what rapid questions are before we start. So Kaushal, we will just ask each question to each one of us. So it will be 3 rounds each. You have to just answer in one line. You don't have to give a deep explanation about what you feel. It's just what comes in your mind at first when I ask you a question. You just have to speak. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll start from me, then Vedant, then you, and then Aniket.
Okay.
Okay. Or if anyone is interested to start out, they can start. We will just go by anything.
Deva,
Vedant?
Sure. Who will go first? Deva, you right?
Yeah, Vedant, go first.
Okay. The first question is your favorite cheat meal.
Fast.
Answer.
It's for you, Kaushal.
For me, I think either burgers or pizzas.
Okay. Aniket?
I cheat every day.
Okay. So my favorite cheat meal is French fries and pizza.
Che.
And Vedant?
And mine is it is little unconventional, but it's chicken momos and faluda.
Chicken fried
Oh
rice,
yes,
chicken
follow
fried
that.
rice. मैं खाता हूँ chicken fried rice.
Okay, so
Okay.
Kaushal, next question for you.
Huh?
Are you ready by any chance?
No, I'm not.
And do you know who asked this question?
I am assuming this is Zaim
Nahi.
or Venkatesh.
Yes, it's Venkatesh.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Okay,
next
so I have
question
a
is
question for you. Okay,
okay, okay,
ask.
okay,
Ask,
okay.
bro. Ask.
हाँ ठीक है. Your favorite music to work out to? Music or
Uh,
track or song, anything?
I basically only listen to metal, any kind of metal, anything that's intense.
Okay.
So
I listen
that's
to
usually what I listen to.
Eminem.
Rap.
No,
Nice.
I have a specific song for it. When
Lose
I
Yourself.
squat, deadlift, lose yourself.
Uh,
That's a
Yeah.
very good placement for me. Like
I think
he vomits,
Vedant.
he pukes.
I think Vedant likes Eminem a lot.
Yeah, I
Vedant
went to
likes Indian rap right now. He's like Banta,
Yo,
MUA,
Ani Singa.
अरे यार.
Deva.
Yes. So, Kaushal, what is your dream total?
My dream.
Total.
Yes.
Total or
Total.
individual lifts?
Total. I think I'll be happy with somewhere around 310, 315 squat,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe 190, 200 bench, and I'd say 325, 330 deadlift. So somewhere between 850 or above is something that I would be happy with, as a completely raw in sleeves total.
In 120 kg category?
Yeah, in 120 kg category.
Okay.
That's something that I'll be
so-
satisfied with.
Okay. So next question is non-linear versus DUP. What do you think is best?
Both.
Wow.
Both?
Great.
Okay.
I love your question.
Combination of both, you can say.
A combination of both. There's nothing that's better than each other. Both of them are used together anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Your top 3 recommendations for powerlifting books. Top 3, huh?
Top 3 JTS program design manual.
You have just said that in last podcast. So you have to add another one.
Another one, bro. The only ones I've read are these.
Okay, so go ahead.
So what I'd say is that see, the books, all of the books will tell you the same stuff, more or less.
Okay.
All of the top authors that have written, some of the best books like JTS, RTS, like Eric Helm's Strength and Pyramid books. Even they have powerlifting work in it along with bodybuilding. But the thing that people need to understand is that all of these books will teach you concepts.
Yeah.
And they will teach you scientific principles of strength and muscle building. And these are things. The thing is that you have to understand the concept and you have to understand its practical use, how you have to apply
it,
and how to apply it. Because every book, every coach at the top level will more or less have an idea of what works and what doesn't work. Even though each coach has his own, own bias of how to do things, most of them will be very similar in the way they think.
Yeah.
So
okay. So Aniket, it's done. It's a rapid question. It's done. So Aniket, go ahead with your 3 questions.
3 questions, okay?
Yeah.
So Kaushal, my 3 questions to you is conjugate for raw lifters.
Conjugate. It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. I don't see that it's really good because of how you have to keep rotating. It's not something that I really agree with because there's so much of.
We can apply it as like a pivot block or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But I don't see the point of actually using it on long-term basis. Yeah, I don't see the point.
Top Indian coaches use that conjugate method. You don't know, Kaushal?
Yeah. I don't agree with it at all. I don't agree with it.
Second question from me: why are some skinny guys so strong?
I think it comes down to genetics, the way their muscles produce force, and also leverages. Powerlifting is a leverage sport.
Third question, very difficult one, Kaushal. Be ready for it, huh?
Okay.
Should I pull conventional or sumo?
Depends on you, man. What works for you? You need to figure that out.
Don't say sumo.
Whatever works for you.
Good.
Okay. So is Kaushal allowed to ask us question or not?
Obviously.
What do you think,
Yeah.
Vedant?
Kaushal, go for it, bro.
I think
If you
Kaushal
have-
is not interested in that.
I'm not. I don't even know that this was there. Otherwise, I would have asked something before.
We
You
had a
can
session
ask
with
in general,
TikTok.
anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't
No, not
has to
really.
be related to powerlifting or fitness stuff. You can ask anything. We can roast someone.
We can
So why-
roast Vedant, Deva, or me.
Why did you go bald?
Deva, Vedant.
I'm just growing out my
Acha.
head, bro.
Why did you go bald?
You asking me?
Yeah,
So-
you're the only one who's bald.
Aniket as well.
Aniket is not bald, bro. He has hair on his head.
Yeah.
That just grew up, bro. I was bald like few weeks ago.
Now he's not. So now you're the only guy who's bald.
I have some hair, bro. I have some testosterone.
Come on,
TST.
Vedant. देश
actually-
जानना चाहता है.
I
Hello.
actually don't like long hair, man. That's why, and I thought it'll take some time for all the salons to open up.
Yeah, that's the yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
a-
I thought it's a better idea to go bald. Like,
That's
who cares
something-
anyway?
That's something even I have been thinking about
See,
because not
Vedant, you just said who cares anyway. Then why are you like not
on video.
recording yourself on
Yeah,
video?
because I don't want to.
Okay.
It's my choice.
Good answer. Good answer.
Acha.
Vedant is feminist over here.
Arey, full cutter.
Kaushal, do you have any questions for us?
Kaushal,
No, bro. I don't really have any questions as such.
Just ask any general questions if you have any.
Like, just validate these people, man.
Huh?
They're ask. Just validate these people. They're hungry for attention. Especially Deva.
come on, bro.
I really don't have any questions. I don't even know what to ask.
Question for my home gym.
Yeah, if only everybody had a setup like that.
Actually, I'm thinking of making one setup after this coronavirus gets over.
I asked Elico once for a quotation for two combo racks and one barbell.
It's expensive.
They asked me to pay $15,000.
$1,000.
For quotation only.
$15,000 for for two combo racks and one barbell. That's it.
$15,000.
That's around 11 lakhs or something.
Yeah, $15,000 is basically around 11 lakhs.
नहीं चाहिए,
Oh.
नहीं चाहिए.
नहीं चाहिए.
And that's just the barbell. That's it. There's no weights also for that. What will I do with it?
Weightlifting,
some-
bro. Weightlifting.
Pull-ups, man, pull-ups.
Transitions.
I
Olympic weightlifting.
I don't know why Elico is that expensive because it's basically like any other equipment that is IPF approved.
Rogue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Rogue.
Rogue is the same thing. Rogue is not that expensive.
But Rogue quality is good. I love Rogue.
Yeah, Rogue quality is
see.
really good.
Rogue.
There are Eligo
Okay.
plates and Rogue poster.
So, it's my choice.
Quite
my
ironic,
choice.
isn't it? Quite ironic.
It's my choice. It's my life.
He even has Elite FTS safety bar.
I have powerlifting t-shirt from
From
Deva.
Yeah, bro.
from
Promote, bro. Promote. Okay. So, does anyone have any questions to ask or anything to say?
Can I ask just one last question? It was
Yeah,
one of
bro.
the mentioned questions.
Ah,
Okay,
bro.
so it is for you, Kaushal,
ah.
and anyone others can answer as well. So, how would you make a person accustomed to powerlifting training who has no history of training or who is stepping into a gym for the first time?
beginner.
Okay. So
Big enough.
usually what I like to do is I don't like to put them directly into some sort of powerlifting style training directly. What I'll focus on is building, like as we've discussed before also, what I like to do is build them on put them on some sort of squat, bench or deadlift program where they're doing it at least once a week. And
Yeah.
the rest of the training is going to be really muscle specific in my opinion, where I try to build their muscle as much as possible because this is their new gains period.
Hmm.
This is the time they can put on the fastest amount of muscle, the most amount of muscle as fast as they possibly can.
Yeah.
So this is the time where I feel like the focus of building muscle should be the highest. But also you practice the movement enough where at least once a week you're practicing a squat, bench, deadlift at least once. You could maybe have a second time, but I don't see the point of getting that specific for somebody who's going into the gym for the first time, because they will progress from session to session always. And I think it's very important to put somebody like that on complete linear.
Yeah.
Because
which is simple to understand, and they can progress very well in linear.
Yeah, they can progress really fast, and you can see how they're progressing weekly.
Yeah, and they can track it by themselves also.
Yeah, and it's very easy to track. It's very easy to follow. It's just all you have to do is increase. That's it.
Yes. Even Vedant started out with linear programming, right?
I think everybody. I think everybody starts. Everybody starts with linear. Everybody goes to the gym and they start doing something, and they're like, next week zyada karunga. That's it. So that's the basic idea of linear. Next week zyada karna hai.
No. Some people are like, aaj zyada karna hai.
That's a problem. That's a problem when you overdo it. But the main thing is that I'd suggest, like, stick to linear programming, stick to learning the movements, stick to understanding the movements, and stick to building as much muscle as you possibly can, because this is your honeymoon phase, as they call it.
Yeah.
Sweet phase.
So do you think, Kaushal, hello?
Bolna.
Do you think like deadlift can break your spinal cord or your back in any way if you do it?
I don't think it's going to break anything, but you're definitely going to have disc issues if you're not going to brace properly, or form proper lifting mechanics. If you don't follow,
you can break, but you need to have some severe kind of.
It has to be very severe. Like, I have never seen anybody breaking a bone just like that. The only time I have seen is when somebody was benching and their forearm, this thing just broke off.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, it just.
When I was,
bro, I don't want to see that.
Listen, when I was in Asian competition, one guy from Bhopal showed me a video of his student. So he was like holding a low bar squat, and his hands were, his wrists were totally overextended, and it just broke. It just broke from the joint there, and it just bar just fell down, and his hand was like. Do you remember that Harry Potter wala scene where he falls down from that broomstick, and his hand is like without anything, sluggish type?
No, bro, we watch Game of Thrones. We don't watch this childish stuff.
I watch Harry Potter.
But I think I can understand.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock.
So it's like this, you mean?
Yeah.
Just hanging like that.
Yes, it's just hanging, and he was terrified like watching that. And he just passed out after watching his hand hang there.
What?
So that video was pretty interesting. I asked him for to share it with me, but he was like, "यार नहीं, वो उसने already competition खेलना छोड़ दिया." So I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, I think that's the thing. No, like, injuries will happen. It'll always happen to everyone.
Yeah.
If you're a serious lifter, it's going to happen at any point of time. Even if you're following, the best program for you, you're recovering, everything. Sometimes life just gets in the way.
Injuries are part of the game.
Yeah, that's something that people need to understand. But obviously, extreme injuries will happen when you don't have, when you're not doing something wrong, right? When you're doing something extremely wrong, that's the only time you'll have, major injuries like this. Like you were saying, in this case, his wrists were so overextended that they broke.
Yeah.
If he didn't keep them in an overextended position, then he probably wouldn't have had that issue at all.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why you have to follow, good lifting mechanics.
That's why we preach at the Strength Mockcast.
Yes.
Self-promotion. Good talking to you, Kaushal, bro. It's nice to hang out with something with like people having in common, na?
Yeah, definitely. It's a very productive podcast. Actually, we had a lot of topics that we covered.
Yes. In a systematic way.
Yeah. I was thinking you can come like every week on this podcast with some other hostess.
We can.
Very nice thing. Like people will love to like see you.
We'll see.
We can also teach you how to speak in Hindi, bro, so that our audience will understand more. Because most of the guys we think we should deliver knowledge is the guys from like rural areas, or the guys who are like more attracted towards Guruji culture. So our main motto is to actually educate them, right? So I feel speaking in Hindi will connect them both with us. I guess.
that is actually true. Yeah, because a lot of people who are into powerlifting are also people who don't really speak English either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They usually come from rural areas, as you said. Yeah, most of them come
Yeah.
from villages where they speak the local language.
Yeah.
That is true actually. Yeah, I'll try to speak next time in Hindi, but my Hindi is not that good.
Same here, bro.
I'm-
I can't even
He-
spell in Hindi, bro.
The-
I can't
doesn't
even
matter.
read
Doesn't
Hindi.
matter. Doesn't matter. You just have to try it once.
We'll try it. I think next time we can try it. I think we can bring on somebody else also next time.
Yes,
And
sure.
then see.
I
Lip
want to
dog
bring
was here,
Ajitesh
bro.
on the podcast, man.
Ajitesh,
Ajit-
he lives in Shimla, so he doesn't find internet there.
Shimla or Assam?
Shimla.
Oh, Shimla, okay.
Oh
Assam.
my god.
He studies in Assam, I guess.
He studies in Kolkata, West Bengal.
Kolkata. West Bengal, okay.
Damn.
We'll
What
have
a
to
place to
see.
be.
Shimla is a good place here.
Yeah, it's a good place. I think that's where he lives, and he studies in West Bengal.
Okay.
Yeah.
VIT.
Even we shot a podcast with Anshuttam.
Anshut.
Acha,
Yeah.
Anshuttam. That podcast was very like I liked that. I liked that podcast. We had fun. It was in
Uploaded
Hindi.
this Saturday.
So it was in Hindi. So we got all connected. Like we were like just anything was coming in our mind. We were just picking it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He can speak.
Yeah.
It's
So
a
Aniket,
podcast.
I should Aniket.
Bol.
I think we should just end the podcast here so that we can further talk more.
So guys, this is the
It
end of
will
the
just-
podcast. So we'll have a new podcast every week. Hope so.
हिंदी में
हिंदी में लाएंगे पॉडकास्ट चालू करेंगे हिंदी में कौशल भाई से रिक्वेस्ट करिए इंस्टाग्राम पे जाके डीएम में उनके छोड़ दीजिए हिंदी में पॉडकास्ट चाहिए हम लोग को सो टिल देन सी या पीस आउट स्टे स्ट्रांग
सदा
सदा
स्ट्रांग रहो
रहो.
सदा स्ट्रांग रहो